They say the mist doesn't just hide trees, it hides a glitch in the lineage of man. For decades, we've been looking for monsters in the woods while ignoring the robust, bipedal mirror standing right in front of us. From the biomechanical reality of the Sasquatch to the genetic relics of the Himalayas and the tragic dehumanization of Zana, we are performing a forensic audit on a sovereignty that refuses to be measured by the small tools of modern man. We gained the map, but we lost the mountain tonight. We traced the jagged line between ancient folklore and the digital abyss. I'm Krista, and this is the autopsy of the first mirror. Stay tuned. The mountain is watching, and it remembers everything. The mist in the Pacific Northwest does not just hide trees, it hides a glitch in our understanding of the primate lineage, a sovereign presence that refuses to be measured by the small tools of modern man. To talk about Sasquatch in 2026 is to perform a forensic audit on a ghost that was caught on 16mm film in 1967. A moment in time where the forest decided to show its face and we, in our infinite arrogance, decided to call it a costume. We are not looking at a monster for a tabloid cover. We are looking at the Patterson-Gimlin film through the cold surgical microscope of biomechanical skepticism. The subject in Bluff Creek, a female hominid of approximately 2.2 meters, possesses what Dr. Jeff Meldrum and other serious anatomists identify as a mid-tarsal break. This is not a human trait. It is a structural adaptation for a massive organism that requires its feet to function as shock absorbers on uneven, treacherous terrain. When you watch that footage, the PGF, you aren't seeing a man in a cheap fursuit, you are seeing the terrifying ripple of the quadriceps and the specific heavy compression of the gluteal muscles that costume technology in the late 60s could not even begin to simulate. The heavy walk, the constant knee flexion, and the total absence of a visible neck are not aesthetic choices made by a hoaxer in a garage. They are the functional, non-negotiable requirements of a high-mass bipedal primate surviving in the vertical density of the Six Rivers National Forest. But beyond the pixels, the photogrammetry, and the grain of the film, there is the sabi. For the indigenous nations of the Nsechaiwana, the Sasquatch is not a curiosity or a target for a hunter. It is one of the 7 sacred laws. It represents honesty. In their worldview, the sabi exists as a permanent, living reminder that we must walk with integrity upon the earth, or the earth will simply stop recognizing us. The Dinsin and other nations apply strict protocols of avoidance. To speak of them is to invite their presence, a presence that demands a level of respect the modern administrative world has long since forgotten. We call it Bigfoot to make it a joke, a commodity to be sold next to cheap jerky and plastic keychains. But the technical data from 1863, the reports of quahogs and mountain gorillas in the Oregon Sentinel, predates the media hype and the digital noise. It points to a persistent biological reality that has been pushed into the fringes of our ledgers. We have mapped the forest with satellites and pierced the canopy with LiDAR, yet we cannot find the bones. Perhaps that is because we are looking for a corpse when we should be looking for a neighbor. A neighbor who knows exactly how to hide in the static of our own technological noise. The Sasquatch is the first mirror, the one that shows us a version of ourselves that never traded the sovereignty of the peak for the safety of the server room. It is a reminder that some powers do not need a temple, they just need the silence of the woods. When the wind shifts in Laguna or the shadows lengthen in California, remember that the monster isn't the one in the trees. The monster is the system that tries to tell you that what you see with your own eyes doesn't exist, because it hasn't been taxed yet. This is the price of our progress. We gained the map, but we lost the mountain. Climbing to 6,400 meters in Lagpala is not an act of exploration. It is an act of desperation, a final attempt to reach the ceiling of a world that is rapidly closing in on us. It is here that the Yeti, the abominable snowman, shifts from a Sherpa nightmare into a molecular mystery that defies the clean categories of our biology. For centuries, the Buddhist tradition, exemplified by the monk Sangwa Dorji, spoke of human bears that assisted the devout in their mountain retreats, creatures of immense strength and silent wisdom that guarded the high passes. Westerners came looking for a primate, an ape-man, that would fit their narrative of a missing link. But the 2012 Oxford-Lausanne project delivered a colder, more complex truth. The DNA sequencing of hair samples from Ladakh and Bhutan didn't reveal a lost Homo species. It revealed a 100% match with a Pleistocene polar bear, Ursus maritimus, that should have been extinct 40 years ago. The Yeti, at least in its physical manifestation, is a relic of the Isa hybrid, a survivor of a lineage we thought the planet had reclaimed during the last great thaw. This revelation doesn't kill the myth, it deepens the noir. We are looking at relict bears that exhibit bipedal behavior, leaving tracks 33 centimeters long with a divergent hallux, the Rosetta Stone, track photographed by Eric Shipton in 1951. In 2019, the Indian Army documented tracks measuring 81 by 38 centimeters near the Makalu base camp. These are not the footprints of a common Ursus arctos isabelinus. They are the signatures of an apex predator that has adapted to the thin air, the crushing cold, and the vertical silence of the world's roof. The Yeti is the biological manifestation of the Earth's memory, a creature that refuses to acknowledge the end of the Pleistocene, walking through our modern world like a ghost that forgot it was supposed to be dead. It lives in the Chuti and the Sangwa, blending the lines between an undiscovered bear and a primitive hominoid. When the wind howls in the Himalayas, it isn't just the cold air hitting the rock. It is the sound of a hybrid sovereignty that doesn't care about our taxonomic boxes or our scientific journals. The genetics tell us it's a bear, but the chronicles tell us it walks like a man and thinks like a god of the heights. In that discrepancy lies the true horror, the realization that the wilderness still holds secrets that our DNA kits can only partially translate. We try to simplify it to say, it is just a bear, because the alternative, that there is a sentient bipedal intelligence guarding the peaks, is too much for our fragile systems to handle. We want a world that is fully documented and safely caged, but the Yeti remains the ultimate outlier, the one that refuses to be processed. It is the guardian of the limit, the one who tells us that there are still places where the air is too thin for our lies to breathe. The most brutal chapter in the Hominini Chronicles doesn't take place in a remote forest or a high mountain pass, but in the village of Zana, Abkhazia, under the flickering shadows of 19th-century lanterns. Zana, the woman captured around 1850, was described by her captors as an almasty, a wild woman of the Caucasus with gray skin, thick red hair, and a physical strength that bordered on the supernatural. She could outrun a horse and lift 50-kilogram sacks with a single hand. For over a century, cryptozoologists used her as the smoking gun for a relic Neanderthal population, a living fossil that had somehow survived in the rugged valleys. They pointed to her offspring, specifically her son Quit, and his robust, archaic-looking skull as proof of a hybrid lineage that bridged the gap between us and the prehistoric past. But the 2021 genomic analysis from the University of Copenhagen performed a different kind of autopsy, one that revealed a horror far more grounded in human history. Zana was not a Neanderthal. She was 100% human. Her DNA revealed a sub-Saharan origin, specifically the L2B1b haplogroup from West Africa. The Noir reality of Zana is far more sinister than any cryptid legend. She was not a missing link. She was a victim of the Ottoman slave trade, a human being who likely suffered from hypertrichosis or other genetic conditions that caused excessive hair growth and a lack of spoken language. When combined with the trauma of captivity, isolation, and being treated like an animal by the noble Ejiji Naba, her physical otherness was interpreted by her captors as bestial. We turned a woman into a monster because her existence was too much for the local system to process as human. The Almasty myth was used as a veil to cover the tragedy of a human life stolen, dehumanized, and reduced to a zoological specimen while she was still breathing. This is the dark side of our hunger for the primitive, the point where our desire to find the other leads us to erase the humanity of the person standing right in front of us. Quit, his skull, exhumed in 19,971, didn't show archaic brow ridges or Neanderthal introgression. It showed the face of a man whose mother had been turned into a ghost by the very people who claimed to be civilized. Zana is the mirror that reflects our own capacity for cruelty, the way we use science or folklore to justify the exclusion of those who don't fit our aesthetic norms. She reminds us that sometimes the most terrifying monster isn't the one in the woods, but the one holding the cage. We looked for a hominid to validate our theories, and instead, we found a crime that the mountains of Abkhazia are still trying to bury. Her story is the ultimate warning. When you strip away the humanity of another to satisfy your curiosity, you are the one who becomes the beast. In the Basque Country, the forest is not a place of fear, but a classroom of ancient, forgotten technologies. The Basajaun, the Lord of the Forest, is a bipedal giant covered in hair that doesn't just haunt the caves of the Bidasoa Valley, he teaches. According to the ancient animist myths, which are among the oldest in Europe, it was the Basajaun who taught humans the secrets of the mill, the forging of iron, and the cultivation of cereals. This isn't just a story to tell children at night. It is a cultural fossil record, a memory of a time when the world was shared between two kinds of intelligence. The last refuge of the Neanderthals in the Iberian Peninsula overlaps perfectly, with surgical precision, with the geographic domain of the Basajaun. When we look at the reports of hairy men protecting the flocks and guarding the heights, we are looking at the 10,000-year cohabitation between Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis, translated into the language of myth. The Neanderthals were not the dim-witted brutes of early scientific caricatures. They were masters of technology, creators of birch resin adhesives and complex tools long before we claimed the title of sapiens. The Basajaun is the cultural echo of that encounter, the relic teacher who remained in the shadows after we chose the path of the city and the plow. Even the Basque language, that linguistic isolate that defies all Indo-European logic, reflects this. Askora Axon Aitzer, Ho derived from Hatestone. This language crystallized when the world was still a shared space, a place where a wild man could be an instructor rather than an enemy. Across the globe, in the suffocating jungles of Sumatra, the Orang Pendek repeats this pattern. A short person with the build of a boxer and massive shoulders, exclusively terrestrial, leaving tracks that no known primate, not even the orangutan, claim. The Suku Anak Dalam tribes call them Hantu Pendek, ghosts that use small stone axes and harvest tubers, living on the periphery of our vision. Whether it is the 1.8-meter Basajaun of the Pyrenees or the 1-meter Orang Pendek of Sumatra, the message is consistent across the millennia. We were never alone in the forest. These are the branches of the Hominini tree that refuse to wither, the lineages that chose to remain in the balance while we chose the path of accumulation. They represent the possibility that the wild man isn't a step backward, but a parallel path, a sovereignty that functions on respect and silence rather than expansion and noise. They are the teachers we fired because their lessons were too hard to learn. Now, we wander in our digital abyss, wondering why the world feels so empty, while the Basajaun watches from the cave, holding the secrets of a fire we no longer know how to light. The Mapinguari is where the Hominini line meets the prehistoric tank, a point where our evolutionary history collides with the armor of the ancient world. In the deep, humid heart of the Amazonian basin, hunters and indigenous tribes speak of a bipedal beast that is invulnerable to bullets and emits a stench so foul it can paralyze a man's nervous system. The ornithologist David Oren has collected over 100 testimonies that point away from primates and toward the Mylodontidae, the giant ground sloths that were supposed to have vanished at the end of the Pleistocene. The Mapinguari's invulnerability is not magic. It is biology. It is explained by osteoderm, small, hard bones embedded under the skin that act as a natural suit of armor, turning a common hide into a ballistic shield. Its tracks, round and heavy like the base of a mortar, match the posterior anatomy of the Megatherium, a creature that once stood 4 meters tall and weighed as much as an elephant. This is the ultimate crypto-reality, a prehistoric survivor that has traded the agility of the trees for the sheer, stubborn defense of the ground, hidden in the green hell of the Tapajaj River. The Mapinguari is the physical embodiment of the Earth's refusal to be conquered. It is a slow, heavy warning to anyone who thinks they can dominate the jungle with a rifle and a ledger. As we conclude this autopsy of the Hominini abyss, stretching from the aggressive Yowie of the Australian outback to the Yeren of the Chinese mountains, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. We are living in a world of server room monsters. We have moved the mystery of the wild into the digital space, hoping that algorithms and simulated images can replace the ancient heavy packs of the forest. But the Sasquatch's mid-tarsal break, the Yeti's Pleistocene DNA, and the Mapinguari's osteoderms are physical, non-negotiable reminders that sovereignty is not something granted by a human government or a scientific committee. The crypto-hominids are the ghosts in our machine, the parts of our own evolutionary history that we have tried to delete from the hard drive, but that remain in the cache flickering in the corner of our eye. We are all one now, standing at the base of the mountain, looking for gold in a handful of common ginger, while the wild men watch us from the mist, waiting for us to remember the law of honesty. The mirror is there, and it is hairy, robust, and devastatingly silent. It shows us what we could have been if we hadn't been so afraid of the dark. Don't let the technology swallow the wonder. Don't let the algorithm tell you what is real. The forest remembers the weight of the Basajaun, and the mountain still knows the name of the Yeti. The Hominini never truly left. They just decided that being alone in the mist was better than being owned by a system that has no soul. This is Krista, reporting from the heart of the fortress. The mist is rising and the gold is turning back to ginger. Keep blasphemous, folks. The mountain is watching.